Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Rati here. So today I'm going to review a book by Ruskin Bond, one of my favorite authors. It's called Our Trees Still Grow in Dehra. Now, Our Trees Still Grow in Dehra is in fact the book for which Mr. Ruskin Bond bagged the Sahitya Akademi Award, the award of India's National Academy of Letters. So now without much ado, let's begin the review. What is so special about Our Trees Still Grow in Dehra that makes it unique and somewhat different from Ruskin Bond's other books? Now, to begin with, Our Trees Still Grow in Dehra is perhaps one of those books by Ruskin Bond which have the maximum amount of autobiographical influence. In fact, we can safely say that out of Ruskin Bond's all books, this has the maximum amount of autobiographical influence. All the stories, in fact, here are like memoirs, tracing the journey of Bond's own life right from childhood to adulthood. It covers different places. The stories here, right from Delhi to Dehradun to even Bond's travels in different parts across the world when he stayed in London. So, of course, it is semi-autobiographical. You cannot call it completely autobiographical. There is an element of fiction to a greatest extent, but still the incidents in different stories and the characters which you meet in different stories are more or less based from, the life experiences of the author Ruskin Bond himself. And the narratorial voice is also, the voice of the author. And it kind of overlaps with the voice of Ruskin Bond. And you can see the overlaps between his own life and the characters here and the narratorial voice here if you read his biography. So I think for someone who is looking forward to knowing more about Ruskin Bond, the person, his life journey, this is a great book to start with. The opening story of the collection itself, gives us a peep into Ruskin Bond's childhood experiences when he was in Java during World War II and how he escaped Java along with his father. That kind of, gut-wrenching description is there. And the subsequent stories also feature characters, including the narrator's grandmother, the narrator's father, and there's a very poignant story when, the narrator's father passes away, which I think has got some parallels with Ruskin Bond's own life story. So overall, as I said, quite a bit of autobiographical influence. The second remarkable thing about Our Trees Still Grow in Dehra is that the book there's a lot of nature descriptions. The book is not just an ode to nature, but it is also a clarion call to humankind to save nature. There's this particular chapter in the book in which the narrator is poignantly, rather emotionally describing, all the trees that he had planted in his house in Dehra, all the trees that were planted and how the landscape is changing and how many of those trees no longer exist. So, there is that sense of clash between modernity and the old times and how that is destroying nature, how that is destroying the environment, changing the landscape, and not just changing the environment and landscape, but also affecting the livelihoods of people. So there's a general commentary on this clash between modernity and a peaceful life, which is full of simplicity and a kind of bucolic bliss. In one of the stories where the narrator is still a child, we meet, and he's living with his grandmother, we meet a character who is a Tongawala, and he's the friend of, the child narrator. And when the narrator is leaving for abroad with his grandmother, then this Tongawala is for the last time dropping them, giving a ride. He's dropping them to the station, and he remarks that now with the motor cars and all coming, my livelihood will be lost. You will probably see me stuck in poverty if you come here for the next time. So that is quite, those kind of small details and these kind of small incidents and narratives are sort of quite telling of the way in which modernity did not just impact environment, but it is also impacting the livelihoods of people. So I think that way is also the book is somewhat different from Ruskin Bond's other books, because in a lot of books we find more prominence of the narrative, the storytelling. But here, apart from the storytelling element, I think there is more focus on the reflective part, on the reflections of the author, and on the, on the overall reflections. That's a sense I get, rather than the storytelling element, reflections and observations. So the stories are always full of reflections and observations of the author, and that is also, I think, what makes Our Trees Still Grow in Dehra special. There's another story here, a lovely story, one of my personal favorites, in which the narrator, again a child, is living in his grandmother's house in Dehra, with his grandmother and grandfather, I think. And the grandfather is very fond of all sorts of pets, including monkeys and even reptiles like a python and whatnot. And the grandmother gets angry with the grandfather keeping all those pets, but still she gives in and reconciles. So that's a beautiful story, talking about the way human beings and plants and animals coexist beautifully in nature, in a natural world. And there are many stories where, the description of nature is there. Binya Passes By, which is again a very popular story of Ruskin Bond, where the beautiful description of the hills in an almost, enchanting fairy tale-like land where he meets this creature, Binya, the narrator, who is now in his 30s, I think. So I think, so much reflection on nature and the connect with the local environment, the trees of Dehra, the nature of Mussoorie, and wherever the author goes, that description of nature is there. And then the second thing is, apart from the description of nature, that description of human feelings, human emotions is there. When the narrator is alone in London, there's a particular story in which he celebrates Christmas with a certain set of people, and that joy of being with people, that simplicity, that unpretentiousness is there. Then the last thing I want to remark about Our Trees Still Grow in Dehra is, I think there is a lot of self-reflexive observation about the class consciousness of that time, the caste divisions and the class divisions which were existing in Indian society. And there's a particular story, I won't talk much about the story, you have to read it for yourself, but there's a particular story that comments on this. And the best part is this, that, the narratorial voice doesn't critique it like, something like Indians doing it, like an outsider critiquing it. But the narratorial voice is itself very much implicated in that, biased class consciousness, caste consciousness. So that is, I think, a very honest way of looking at these caste and class divisions, that the childhood narrator is looking at his own caste biases, caste prejudices, which were affected by the prevalent period of those times, and how he as a child, the world of emotions during childhood is enabling him to get out of those prejudices. So overall, Our Trees Still Grow in Dehra is a lovely book. Read it for Mr. Ruskin Bond if you want to know more about Ruskin Bond, the person, his life experiences, and read it for the sheer love of nature, beauty of nature, and an ode to environment and nature. So guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you like my content, please do press the like button on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. For more videos, do watch out this space. Thank you so much for listening. See you soon.